Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Martin Stenhall. I'm the investor contact in Aker BioMarine. It's with great pleasure that we're today announcing our first pharmaceutical agreement for development of therapies based on LYSOVETA. We have two presenters of the agreement today. It's Mats Johansen, CEO of Aker BioMarine, and Mr. Michael Davidson, medical doctor, entrepreneur, and founder of biotech companies. First, Mats Johansen will talk about LYSOVETA, and then Michael Davidson will go through the targeted opportunities and the way forward. We will open for Q&A at the end of the presentation, and the slide pack will also be made available on our website. So without further ado, I give the word over to our CEO, Mats Johansen.
Thank you, Martin. Okay, so important day today, announcement of the first pharmaceutical deal for our LYSOVETA technology. I'm gonna just start in the beginning here now to do a quick recap of what that technology is about and what Aker BioMarine's plans for that is before we move over to the specific details of the deal we have done, and then Michael Davidson will take us through the plans and opportunities that we're pursuing together. So first of all, if you remember back to when we launched this back in November last year, LYSOVETA is based on a new technology that was discovered in 2014, a big scientific breakthrough that basically documented how these important omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA, is transported between the blood-brain barrier and also between the blood and other organs as well. Scientists have known for many, many years that these fatty acids are important for these organs, but we actually didn't know how they get transported into the organs. In 2014, that was discovered. And discovery was that this molecule that you can see on the screen here, LPC, DHA, EPA, is the particular molecule, the form this fatty acid needs to be in to be able to be transported into the organ and has its health effect. So when this was discovered in 2014, Aker BioMarine immediately started working on this opportunity, looking at process development and how we can then take our starting material to create this molecule. We have done our own research to really understand how it works and measure how it's transported into the molecules. We have filed IP, and we have also now recently licensed in the IP in the field, and now also starting our commercialization strategy around this. Aker BioMarine has a plan to be the global leader in this space for all users of this discovery, both based on the strong IP portfolio we have, but also because of the unique starting material and the cost we have of producing it. As mentioned, and as you can see illustrated on the right side, we have a strong IP portfolio. So since 2014, we have filed more than 20 patents. 2 of them are already granted within this LPC space. We have more than 45 background patents, which is important also for this space. And also about the same time in 2014, when we started working on this, also University of Chicago, Illinois started also doing development and research into this molecule. And a week ago, we announced a partnership agreement with them where we are getting an exclusive license to all their IP related to this field, and also establishing a research partnership to further explore the uses of this technology for human health. What makes Aker BioMarine unique in this area and what makes it possible for us to become a global leader in this space is because of our starting material. As you can see illustrated on the bottom here, this is the natural molecule we will find in krill by the resource. This is what the LPC molecule looks like for transporting this EPA and DHA molecules to the brain and other organs. So as you can see, it's quite similar. So you have a relatively easy way to manipulate this molecule to become that exact LPC molecule you need to deliver these EPA and DHA into the brain and other organs. Because of the starting point and because of all the work we have put in the last 6 years, we have now a production process that has a cost which is significantly lower than any other known cost or any other known processes for making this LPC molecule. So we have actually now a viable production process that's being now scaled up that can produce these molecules at affordable costs so that you can commercialize the use of it. As mentioned last time when we announced this, Aker BioMarine, we have a strategy for commercializing this, which is twofold. The first part of the strategy is to commercialize in the areas where we already have competence and where we have an edge. That means launching it as an ingredient into the dietary supplement space and also looking into launching it as our own dietary supplement brand as an extension to what we do on Kori today. This is what we're good at. This is what we have done for many years. And here we can take that opportunity out to the market. When it comes to opportunities within pharmaceuticals, particularly that we're going to talk about today, our strategy is to partner up with strong companies, with strong people that have the right competence and track record to develop these type of products in the pharmaceutical area. And the example of the deal we're making today is a perfect fit for what we're looking for. Prioritization for Aker BioMarine going forward in this area is threefold, is to make this type of partnership in the pharmaceutical area, but also in the infant formula area, which is a focus area for us. It is to fast track the dietary supplement products with an approval in 2022, and then seek to do a research partnership with universities globally to get more knowledge about what this technology can mean for health of people. And if you go into the particular area or the particular agreement that we have signed today, we have now going to focus on 5 therapies. Michael Davidson will go into the details of them later. They are related to eye health and to brain health. A separate company will be set up, a single purpose vehicle to develop these therapies that we have made an agreement about now. And then Michael Davidson will go out and raise about $30 million to develop proof of concept through clinical trials of these therapies. What we are putting into this in return for that ownership is we're giving an exclusive license of all the relevant IP in the field of these distinct therapies that you can see on the left side. And we're also going to be supplying all the product needs for this LPC molecule, both in the development phase and also in the commercial phase. And in return of that, we are getting 50% ownership before the initial funding of this new company that's being set up. We're getting milestones to fund the pharmaceutical supply chain development that we need to do in Aker BioMarine. And we're getting double-digit royalties from the commercial sales of the therapies, and then payment of the product supply. And with that, I'm going to give the word to Michael Davidson. That will take us through more details about these specific therapies and opportunities related to that. And before I do that, I just would like to give him also a proper introduction. Michael Davidson has this unique combination of being both a medical doctor and a professor at the University of Illinois, Chicago, combined with a very successful track record as a biotech entrepreneur. Yes, he has started several successful pharmaceutical companies, latest exiting one of them now last summer, a company called Corvidia that was sold to Novo Nordisk for more than $2 billion. So we are very happy to have a partnership with Michael Davidson. And with that, I'm going to give the word to you, Michael, and you can take it on from here. And let me know, I'll switch the slides.
Great. Thanks, Mats. It's a great honor to be here, and I'm excited to talk about this new development and how to use LPC omega-3s to address a number of very important unmet medical needs. If you could turn to the next slide, Mats. So a little bit more about my background. So I am a cardiologist, professor at University of Chicago in Illinois, and I have been focused in my career on new therapies for preventing heart disease, cardiovascular disease. And I was the first one to do an omega-3 supplement trial back in the 1980s and showed it lowered triglycerides. And from that, subsequently, I was very involved in the development of of LYSOVETA, which was over $1 billion drug developed by Reliant, and GSK acquired that company in the 90s. And then I went on to found my own omega-3 company called Omthera. Omthera developed Epanova, which was a free fatty acid, omega-3 fatty acid, which was then acquired by AstraZeneca. And as part of AstraZeneca, I spun out Corvidia, an interleukin-6 monoclonal antibody. As Mats mentioned, was acquired by Novo Nordisk in July of 2020. And just recently, I became CEO of New Amsterdam Pharma, which is also a reacquired asset from Amgen for cholesterol lowering. So my background is heavily involved in omega fatty acid novel approach, and what I'm very excited about is the new science I want to go over with you about how these new discoveries has led me to be extremely interested in how to develop pharmaceutical approaches for the LPC omega-3 formulations. So I just want to point out that some of the scientific advisors that I've worked with over the years that have heavily influenced this field. One is Sabaya, the University of Illinois professor I worked with in the 80s initially, and got him involved in omega-3s. He's the IP that was licensed by Aker recently that discovered that LPC, EP, and DHA is the preferred substrate for this important transport, MFSD2A, which Matt's referred to as the transporter that passes the blood-brain barrier or the retinal barrier to get these omega-3s into the tissues. Then Alan O'Malley at the National Institute of Health has been very involved in discovering new longer chain fatty acids for important health issues. So they've been involved, and I just want to highlight some of the important discoveries on the next slide and how that has led me to be extremely excited about this opportunity. So there's been 3 important discoveries that have come out recently that really speak to why this is an important therapeutic approach. So as I mentioned, this transporter was discovered in 2016, and this transporter is what gets the omega-3s across the blood-brain barrier, or the retina, or the placenta, or the testes. So it's an important transporter, and lysopc DHA is the preferred substrate. And what's also important about lysopc is that it can be directly absorbed into the circulation and not being broken down into the free omega-3 like free DHA. One of the big issues that has to be taken into consideration is that when you take it orally, does it get into that form in the plasma? And lysopc does that. And then another important discovery was the fact that as we get older, the enzymes that make longer chain fatty acids like DHA becomes less effective, less active, and therefore you develop disorders that are linked to lower amounts of EP and DHA in these tissues. And one of the important measurements of aging is the activity of these enzymes. They're called elongases 2 and 4 in particular, these elongase enzymes. As we get older, these enzyme activities are impaired, and therefore leading to these aging-related disorders like macular degeneration, another term is geographic atrophy, Alzheimer's disease, low sperm counts, and so forth. And so that discovery also augments the opportunity that we need to find a better way to get these omega-3s, through this transporter into these tissues, with the enzymes that are used to make these longer chain fatty acids are being used importantly for these health conditions. And then we also have these very long chain PUFAs that are needed for normal photoreceptor function. And again, the enzymes that are important for this elongation process become impaired with aging, and there's actually genetic mutations in which the enzyme is completely absent, and that leads to blindness in individuals, and even juvenile blindness, which is an orphan indication. So when you think about what the opportunities are from a pharmaceutical perspective, these complex mixtures of LPC, EP, and DHA, there's 3 important medical pharmaceutical opportunities: dry eye, age-related macular degeneration, AMD, then ApoE4 associated Alzheimer's disease. All of them are linked to low levels of DHA in particular and other omega-3 fatty acids. And then was also discovered is that this transporter, MFSD2A, when it's genetically deficient, leads to severe microcephaly in the brain, and that leads to congenital abnormalities. So, that is a similar thing that happens with gestational diabetes, where they have impairment of DHA transport into the baby, into the fetus. And also discovered just last year was that Zika infections, one of the unfortunate consequences of Zika infections is that the babies are born with low brain volumes, microcephaly. And what was discovered is that Zika actually destroys the MFSD2 receptor, and therefore the mother cannot transport the DHA into the baby, leading to microcephaly. So there's really a very well validated, both genetically and with these viral infections or gestational diabetes, where you cannot get adequate DHA into the baby, leading to these brain abnormalities. So we're targeting, $30 million to do the necessary what's called IND enabling studies to make them into pharmaceutical acceptable products, doing the appropriate preclinical testing, and then move forward with important proof of concept studies in humans. Next slide. So here are the 4 indications. I already addressed them, and what is important is that they're all very large unmet medical needs. Dry AMD, there's really no therapy available for these patients, and so therefore it's a leading cause of blindness, and it has greater than $20 billion potential opportunities. Dry eye is the most common cause of visits to the ophthalmologist in the United States. And again, it's a very large opportunity, and the therapies that we have available are really not that effective in general. Of course, Alzheimer's disease, especially the ApoE4 variety, which is the most common, about 60% of patients with Alzheimer's disease are ApoE4 genetically positive. And what's recognized in those patients, they have low levels of DHA in their brain, which is associated with the progression of dementia in these patients. I already alluded to the gestational diabetes, but it's a clear opportunity for a medical food in which women who have gestational diabetes can't get adequate DHA into the babies, leading to unfortunate congenital abnormalities. Next slide. So what's interesting about this opportunity from a pharmaceutical perspective is that DHA is already in dietary supplements, for preventing age-associated macular degeneration or AMD. And it is modestly effective, but certainly, most patients still progress despite these supplementation with antioxidant vitamins and that do contain small amounts of DHA. What we now recognize is that in order to get the DHA into the retina, you have to use a lysopc form. And so what's exciting about this opportunity from a pharmaceutical perspective is that you can measure what's called geographic atrophy, very accurately with different modalities. You can measure how much loss of retinal function there is with these type of scans, and this is an approved pharmaceutical pathway for approval. As of now, there's no approved therapies for this condition, and so we think that demonstrating within a 1 or 2 year period of time, we can show the reduction of geographic atrophy. And that can lead to a regulatory FDA approval for this therapy. Also, dry eye, already ophthalmologists are using DHA supplementation for dry eye, again with mixed success. Most trials, some have been positive, some have been negative. And again, the belief is that the studies that have been negative are due to the fact we cannot really adequately develop formulations until now that can address getting the DHA into the cornea or into the lacrimal glands that can result in improvement in this very common condition that leads to a lot of consequences and loss of quality of life for these patients. Next slide. So this is just some of the science behind what Matt's referred to, is that it's lysopc, DHA or EPA, that goes directly absorbed in that form and then go to the brain or to the retina, then be taken up by this tissue. If you give just standard EPA, DHA, even in high concentrations like ethyl esters or triglyceride forms, it doesn't get absorbed as much as it should, and then it has to be converted to the lysopc form by the liver, which is very modest in that transformation. So you do get some lysopc produced through these other forms of EPA or DHA, but very, very small amounts. So lysopc can be directly absorbed and go in high levels to the brain, into the retina, to address these important medical issues. Next slide. So here's some of the evidence that was developed by Dr. Sabaya, my colleague at University of Illinois, who I've known for many years, that he was able to show that the DHA in the lysopc form is what's readily taken up by the brain, and this benefit leads to improvement in certain aspects of Alzheimer's measurements in these preclinical models. Then, and this is again internal data from Aker, showing the same is true for EPA as well, that we can get better uptake of EPA and DHA in the brain through the lysopc versus the standard either ethyl ester, triglyceride, or even phospholipid forms found in krill oil. You get much higher levels in the brain and the retina with lysopc formulations. Next slide. And this is critically important for Alzheimer's disease treatment and prevention. A recent study just came out showing that when you gave high levels of DHA in dietary supplements, there was only able to increase DHA in the spinal fluid by very, very small amounts. And so again, we believe in a proof of concept study that we can show much better uptake in the brain, and that low levels of DHA are most common in those with the ApoE4 genotype. We can demonstrate this benefit in a very feasible proof of concept study. And that I think will be tremendously exciting for the field and lead to a strong interest from large pharmaceutical companies to develop this therapy further. There have been a number of DHA studies for Alzheimer's disease, and they have been met with mixed success, especially when they have ApoE4 genotype present, which is the most common form of related dementia in the world. Next slide. So here's our plan. Our plan is to do the necessary process improvements that Aker is going to develop, continue to develop for the lysopc formulation, do the appropriate IND enabling studies for pharmaceutical development. And so we believe we'll be ready in the beginning of 2022, for 4 proof of concept studies for dry age-associated macular degeneration, dry eye syndrome, ApoE4 related Alzheimer's disease, and gestational diabetes. As I mentioned, these are 4 tremendous opportunities, not just financially, but they address these important unmet medical needs that could be transformative to the healthcare field. So I'm extremely excited about the new science. These discoveries have been relatively recent. This 2014 was the discovery of the transporter. The elongase enzyme activity is just in the last couple of years. The work by Sabaya and now Aker as well, showing that the LPC form is necessary to get uptake in the brain and the retina. And so for a pharmaceutical perspective, this is a great opportunity, and when I approached Aker, it was a perfect fit for both of us to move forward and developing this from a pharmaceutical perspective. I can only say that we're just beginning the process of talking to potential investors, but one of the key areas that has developed a lot of interest among biotech investors has been the aging-related diseases, such as Alzheimer's disease and macular degeneration and other important aging-related conditions. And this would be, I think, will be a perfect fit for where the investment community is going for new biotech investments. And I look forward to working with Aker and taking this forward into the next step, which will involve about $30 million investment, and then moving forward with these proof of concept studies. So now I'll turn it back over to Mats and look forward to your questions. But this is just a summary of the investment. Again, we're talking about 4 different conditions for big opportunities, as well as an orphan path opportunity as well. And again, this has been my background. I've started involved in 3 different biotech companies, all successfully funded, 2 exits. And now with my 3rd company, New Amsterdam Pharma, just recently started that company as CEO. I believe this is a great opportunity for both Aker and the venture capital community to develop this into important pharmaceutical therapies that can make a difference for patients going forward. So thank you very much, and look forward to your questions.
Okay, with that, I'm stopping share the presentation, and we are now have some time for answer question either to Michael or to me. So just bring them on. Yeah, Susanne.
Yes, just a minute. Thanks, that was super interesting. So thank you for a really interesting presentation. I was wondering, because you're showing the uptake through binding to the LPC is about 2.7 times. So I was wondering, how does it reflect, for example, the levels that you will get in the brain? Is there any data on that omega-3 levels can become too high in the brain or in the eye, as it's been shown that it could give some side effects in other organs, for example, with too high levels of omega-3, or do you think it's not high enough for that to be an issue?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's a good question. I don't think it'll be an issue because you still get extremely low levels overall in the brain. The EPA was a good marker because there's very little EPA in the brain because it gets converted into DHA with these different elongase enzymes. So that was why I think you see the EPA levels go up, because again, it's very low in the brain in general, so you can see a bigger increase. DHA, is very small amounts, and again, we're not giving like levels that could cause harm in general. These are still naturally occurring levels. We just want to get the DHA levels back to what people would consider normal levels for somebody with Alzheimer's disease. The same is true for those with macular degeneration. I mean, we know that DHA is the predominant. So, by the way, DHA is the predominant fatty acid in the brain and the retina, and so there's a lot of DHA and in the retina and the brain tissue. About 60% is I think a rough estimate of how much fatty acids there are in the brain of that type of. So the brain wants to have more DHA. The retina wants to have more DHA. That's what's used for the normal neuron function or normal photoreceptivity type of function. So I don't think we can overdose it. I think it's your question. I don't think that'll be the case in general. Again, we're not giving. We're still going to give, I think, relatively modest levels of these pharmaceutical products, to address these issues for patients.
Okay, great. And then also a question for you, Mats, because you're saying in the press release that you will develop both food supplements and these drug development efforts. So I was just wondering how you're going to differentiate between those two, and if those will be different products or different molecules that you're developing, or if these will just be different concentrations of what you're doing.
Yeah, there will be different products with different concentrations. So it will be 2 different products, clearly differentiated.
Okay.
Yeah, can I add to that too? Because obviously LYSOVETA and was an over $1 billion drug, and obviously the VASCEPA, and also very $600 million U.S. sales last year. So I think these are pharmaceutical products that are differentiated for the dietary supplements. I think even here it could be even well, I mean, I think that having a dietary supplement approach is really important for general health, but that should treat diseases. You need higher doses and higher concentrations, which is differentiated here from a pharmaceutical perspective.
Thank you very much.
Martin?
Thanks. This is most likely to you, Mats. The production of these LPCs molecules, I guess they will come out of the factory you have in Houston. Will you need a lot of changes to the existing product lines to make this new product?
No, so I think we said that when we came out with the launch in November, that there's about a $5 million investment in the Houston plant to get this at a large scale.
Okay, thank you for reminding me. Yeah.
Okay, if there's no other questions, we'll stop now. Martin IR here, he's available later if there's any question coming up later, and we can also facilitate contact with Michael Davidson if there's any particular questions related to that he needs to answer as well. So with that, thank you for joining, and have a nice afternoon.